Well, yeah, I want to welcome our guests and all of you who called in today and are going to join us for the live recording. I want to just give thanks to Open Arms Perinatal Services for funding these podcasts so that I can be able to provide create the technology and be able to share some of these pieces for Indigenous families and community members. Again and again, I am asked by people about, native birth stories and, having some childbirth education materials that feel rooted in culture and rooted in faces that look like the families that I'm working with. And, as we know, there's not as many resources that are published and in print when it comes to Indigenous birth. And we're really committed and working to change that. And so we've began this podcast. This is episode 3, and it will eventually be audio clips and things that will be available on the website. Today will also be interactive with video and with our guests. And around the theme for today is a journey into knowing. And so I have 2 different guests that will share from different perspectives. And those perspectives will be focused on, how do you gather the information you need to birth in power? How do you, get the pieces of information that help you interact with maybe a hospital system, or maybe for you to just put terms that make sense that you can communicate with others about, to have some understanding about what to expect, that your body is going to be shifting and changing. How you gather information on, foods and stories and traditions and things that you want to bring into your birth. And then how you learn with every bit of information that you gather. So that journey through a first birth opens a window to what often people do for a different path on their second and beyond. And so I want to begin and just share that our first activity is going to be a childbirth education activity, that whether you're a birth keeper on this call or a pregnant person on this call, the idea is that it's a tool for how to teach people these pieces of terminology that, in no way can speak to the amazingness of and the beyond our understandings that is happening as the body's changing in pregnancy. And then our second guest speaker will share her stories, her story of giving birth, her story of how she gathered information in community and birthed in community, and how she's working to support other families to be doing the same. So welcome. For this beginning part, I'm going to have the ability to unmute yourself, just for the people who are going to read and be a part of this interactive activity. And then after that, just so that we can have crisp audio, I will change it to where people cannot unmute themselves, just so that while Melissa is sharing her story, that we don't have any accidental interruptions. And then towards the end, we'll also leave some space and time to be able to just have some questions. So if you're currently pregnant or have anything on your mind, feel free to add it into the chat bar at any time. And then when towards the end of the episode, then we'll leave some time to be able to just share and address any other questions or thoughts that people have. So at this time, I want to make sure that if everyone can make sure that they are muted. Okay. And I introduce Vanessa. So I'm going to mute myself, and Vanessa, you've got the stage.
Thank you, Rhonda. I am so grateful to take part in your podcast. I'm Vanessa Lovejoy-Guron, and I am a doula and a Le Mans certified childbirth educator, and am Indigenous peer breastfeeding counselor. So currently my work is through Daybreak Doulas with United Indians of All Tribes Foundation, and our program is funded by a levy called Best Stars for Kids, approved by the good people of King County. So currently we are serving Indigenous pregnant people who live in King County or are birthing in King County. So please feel free to send them our way. I'm sure there'll be a way for us to include our contact info. So today I want to talk a little bit about childbirth ed and a doula, what a doula does. It's not all doulas have additional childbirth education. What we offer with Daybreak Star Doulas, because we are all childbirth educators on our team, it's a 3-person team, we are able to do this additional education with our clients. And not all doulas do that. In fact, for me, it is a 2-aspect thing, that when I am a childbirth educator and a doula for a particular family, I have to carve out separate time to do the childbirth ed, because otherwise it would take space of my doula work, right? So for me, it's really important so that they get both. And if they don't get one or the other from me, I help them find the resource so that they could do that. This activity that we're going to do is a tool that a colleague, another Le Mans certified childbirth educator, had created. Her name's Mallory Emerson. I used to work with her with Parent Trust, which is a childbirth education nonprofit org in Seattle. And she published it in a Le Mans article. And so I adapted it. And the artwork that you'll see is by me and my kids. And I adapted some of the wording in the script so that it's more inclusive. So let's see, what else did I want to say before we get into this? So what we're going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and then I'll call out the folks who volunteered to read their part, and then you can unmute yourself when it's your turn. And then the next slide would be a picture. So there's like a correlating picture as the pregnancy anatomy unfolds. Yeah, so let's start. Oh, let me say one more thing. So this activity is very good for a class, okay? So if you have a class of 2, 3, 4, 5 couples, it really helps break the ice. It's kind of silly, but it ends up being very, conversational. People always have more questions, and it builds on all of these things that we know as birth keepers that it's important to educate people. In this format, we're not going to have that same back and forth, but hopefully you can see what I mean and how it could be useful. Same thing with a couple. Now that I'm using this presentation on Zoom with my Daybreak Star clients, it is just as useful. We just don't have that peer learning aspect, which is fine. So Daybreak Star Doulas childbirth education. So the amazing anatomy of pregnancy. Get a little sneak peek at my wonderful artwork. Okay, So Tiara was going to be our great and mighty uterus.
Okay, here I go. The great and mighty uterus. I am the powerhouse around here, stretching and expanding to hold your growing baby. My muscles are ready to do the hard work of contracting during labor. When I receive estrogen from the placenta, I begin producing prostaglandins for the cervix and become much more sensitive to oxytocin, the love hormone. As the levels of oxytocin rise, I have a job to do: contract. As labor gets closer, my practice contractions will get more frequent. After lots of practice, which you may or may not notice, I'll get into a nice steady rhythm with contractions that don't go away. Remember, longer, stronger, and closer together. Fun fact, I'm so strong I have 2 different types of muscles that help open the cervix and move the baby down towards birth.
Thank you, TR. There's our uterus. Okay, and Ellen was going to be our amniotic sac.
All right. Amniotic sac, more than just a bag of water. I'm connected to the placenta, have 2 layers, and fully surround that baby of yours, keeping them snug inside. I'm full of amniotic fluid, providing a cushion and buffer for baby. With my help, they are safe from bumps, loud noises, and other things that might disrupt the important work they are doing in there. I also play a role in making sure baby gets all the fluid and nutrients they need to grow. And as that little person practices breathing and swallowing, you'll find me moving through their system, getting them ready for birth. Late in pregnancy and during labor, I become more susceptible to rupturing. When your water breaks is variable. Sometimes it is the first sign of labor, but sometimes I stay intact and strong until you push that baby all the way out. Most commonly, I release my fluid in active labor. Fun fact, baby can taste different compounds in the amniotic fluid as it changes based on what the pregnant person is eating. You can influence baby's palate even before they are born.
Thank you, Ellen. There's our amniotic sac. Baby's home. Trina was going to be our pal placenta.
All right, our pal placenta. I'm only around for a short time, just for this pregnancy, but while I'm here, I've got a lot of work to do. For most of the last 40-ish weeks, I've been protecting that little rock star of yours from germs and bugs and other things they might not want, while letting through the amazing nutrients and oxygen they need to grow. But things are changing. I just got a message from your baby's lungs. It's go time. I'm going to convert that message into estrogen and send it off to the uterus. I also produce prostaglandins to help the stubborn cervix ripen and soften. I'm also going to let some extra stuff through to baby. They need vitamin D and iron to make up for what's lacking in breast milk those first 6 months. They also need a good dose of antibodies to protect them a bit before they can build up their own immune systems. Fun fact, you grow a new placenta with each pregnancy. I'm your body's only disposable organ.
Amazing. There's our placenta. Okay. And Melissa was going to be our rock star baby.
Rockstar baby. I'm the star of this show. All of this work our bodies have been doing is to get me growing big and strong. While I've been tucked inside, I can hear your voices, respond to your touch, and I'm practicing important things like sucking, hiccuping, and swallowing. My big, heavy head turns down towards the cervix by about 36 weeks, so I'm ready to make my debut, but there's still work to be done before I'm born. Some things I pick up in the last few weeks of pregnancy: vitamin D, iron, immunity, body fat, brain growth. I'm packing on the ounces so I can rock all the hard work of adjusting to the outside world. I kick things off when my lungs are ready to breathe. I send a message out to my pal placenta so we can get this show on the road. As the uterus pushes me down and the cervix opens to make way, I rotate and tuck my head to find the perfect pelvic pathway. Fun fact, the stress of labor and birth causes a rush of adrenaline for me, which will help me when I need to breathe, heat myself up, and latch to nurse after I'm born.
Thank you, Melissa. There's our rock star baby. Okay, umbilical cord. Rhonda, will you be our true love connection?
Umbilical cord, a true love connection. Baby needs oxygenated blood full of nutrients, because don't we all? And I get it to them. When their heart pumps out the deoxygenated blood, I carry it back to my pal, the placenta. It's a smooth moving system that keeps baby on track. I'm very strong, and I'm often clamped and cut about 30 to 60 seconds after birth, but I prefer to finish all my work and get clamped long after I stop pulsing. If you are cutting me to detach baby, be prepared to put in some good muscle to get me through. Don't get nervous. I've got no nerve endings and no one is hurt. Surrounding the 2 arteries and 1 vein inside me is a substance called Wharton's jelly. The jelly helps protect the arteries and vein throughout pregnancy and birth, but after baby is born, it collapses and I flatten out. Fun fact, it is possible to delay cord clamping and still donate blood to your local cord bank if you want. Check with your healthcare provider and have this conversation during one of your prenatal appointments.
Fantastic. And there's our true love connection. Okay, I'm the gatekeeper, the cervix. Hey, give me a break and a little privacy, please. To protect this baby, I grew longer and thicker during pregnancy, so I have to change a whole lot before baby can be born, and it's a tricky business. Your midwife or doctor might poke around to see what I'm up to, but I'm not a big fan of all that prodding. I like to do my work in private. Here's the deal. The prostaglandins from the uterus and placenta help me soften. So, in other words, ripen. The pressure of that baby's head also starts to thin me out. Another word for that is efface. Eventually, I'll start to open up, dilate, from 0 to 10 centimeters. Sometimes that change starts to happen in the weeks before birth, but it will usually take lots of laboring to get me to really open up completely. Fun fact, for more protection, I shift towards the back of the vagina during pregnancy for extra protection. But sometime before baby needs to make their exit, I shift to an anterior position. That points more directly towards the exit ramp, aka the vagina or birth canal. So there's our cervix, the gatekeeper. Very important job. Little Miss Mucus Plug is Elizabeth.
All right. Noticed more mucus, discharge, runny nose, congestion, etc. lately? In your cervix, I'm a specific type of mucus that really helps out. I hang out in the opening to the uterus, keeping bacteria away from baby. As the cervix starts to give way and open up before labor, it's really normal for me to make a quick exit. You might not even notice, but if you see something in your underwear or on your toilet paper that looks like a blood-tinged ball of snot, surprise, that's me. Take heart, it means some changes are starting to happen, and labor will start. Maybe soon, maybe a few weeks from now. Fun fact, don't worry, baby is still protected and more friendly mucus plugs will take my place to keep protecting against infection.
Another fun fact I'd add that not all folks actually see that blood-tinged ball of snot, but as a doula, I do enjoy those text pictures from my clients, but it doesn't always happen, and that's okay too. So there she is, Little Miss Mucus Plug. Okay, so Marina, will you be our vagina, aka birth canal?
Yes. I'm stretchy, I'm flexible, I'm full of folds and creases that help me expand for baby's passage and then go back to my normal size. As we get closer to birth, it is normal to notice some spotting in addition to my extra discharge during pregnancy. Call your care provider if you're concerned. The bladder and rectum are on opposite sides of me, so it is important that you keep them both empty throughout labor. Fun fact, The perineum is the area between the vulva, the external organs surrounding the opening of to the vagina, and the anus. It has a chance of tearing during birth. These tears tend to be minor and don't happen for everyone. There are things you can do during pregnancy and birth to reduce the chance of tearing, like prenatal, perineal massage, and using warm compress during pushing stage.
Thank you, Marina. There's our birth canal. Michelle, will you read our hormones? We run the show. Michelle there? Michelle, did you still want to read? Oh, you have to unmute. You have to unmute. Can you unmute her, Rhonda? There we go.
Got it. There we go. Okay, hormones. We run the show. You've heard a lot about us, but we are the hormones running through your body and baby's body. You might not be able to see us, but we are really making things happen. Oxytocin. I cause contractions. Contractions make baby move down and open the cervix. Keep my levels high by helping laboring person feel safe, relaxed, and emotionally and physically nourished. Endorphins. We are the feel-good hormones and balance out the discomfort caused by your oxytocin-fueled contractions. Our levels rise along with oxytocin. Some call us nature's pain reliever. We are your friend. Adrenaline. I'm the stress hormone. Think fight or flight. When I'm rushing through the body, oxytocin and endorphins take a nosedive, slowing labor way down. But I can be useful at the tail end of labor for a rush of energy to push baby out. My levels also rise in baby to keep them alert and ready for that first latch.
And I also wanted to add with oxytocin, what I always do with my clients is I give them this idea that as their doula, I'm not their main source of oxytocin. Their main source of oxytocin is usually their partner or their mom or their sister, their auntie, their loved one. And my job as their doula, part of my job as their doula, is to help make that connection for them. And so that line of keep my levels high by helping the laboring person feel safe, relaxed, emotionally and physically nourished is really important. I'll talk more about my role as a doula a little bit after. We have one more thing. So here are hormones. Okay, and Elizabeth, you've been voluntold. Are you ready? Rest your chest, our milk-making goodness.
All right. Despite the gossip, we are not storage tanks for milk. Instead, we spend pregnancy bulking up the pieces of a complex milk-making factory. When all of those pieces are prepped and baby is ready, the components are all ready to kick into high gear when baby starts latching at each feeding. The hormones that move through your body during labor and immediately after the placenta is delivered tell us that we should be ready to feed that baby. Colostrum is baby's first food, and that is what we are working on already. It is thick, yellow, and produced in small amounts at first to match baby's tiny belly. It is chock full of antibodies and proteins. Fun fact, our nipples are awesome. They darken during pregnancy and will act like a high contrast target for baby in the first hour after birth. We also have tiny bumps in the areola called the Montgomery glands. The secretion released from these glands will mimic the smell of amniotic fluid right after birth. We want that baby to find us ASAP once they are born.
Okay, so there is I'm going to stop sharing here. Thank you for all of you who participated. You read your parts very well. So as a doula, I want to make sure that the families in my care have that information, whether they get that information that we just read through a formal childbirth education class or through a book. if they don't have it, I provide that information for them, so that when we're looking at our birth preferences, kind of our plan for how this might look like, we have all the pieces and all of the language that they will be able to communicate with their healthcare provider. And I also know that not a lot of people need to go into, you might have noticed that the hormones weren't like technically, you know, I just went into like the real simple part of the hormone, and it doesn't go super deep because people don't really want that super deep. They do want to know what adrenaline is and why that's important in keeping their labor going. So if anyone had any questions on that's why that's why I had it that way. And I also want to make sure that I give credit to Mallory Emerson, who wrote the original script, and then I just adapted it so it was more language inclusive. So a thing about doulas. So we have a joke at Daybreak Star Doulas. We are your professional aunties, right? And so think of us as somebody who's been through it. Think of us who has, yes, we all have training. We all know how to help a laboring person with positions and massages and different maneuvers to help progress labor. And as Daybreak Star Doulas, we're also full spectrum doulas, which means we do birth, prenatal, birth, and postpartum, and a full reproductive spectrum. So if you know someone who needs help with a miscarriage or potential miscarriage, if you need help with, if you know someone in community who is thinking about abortion or some kind of termination, we can walk with them through that. We've also walked people through tubals, you know, when they have their tubal ligation. So that's what I mean by full spectrum. And also wanted to note that folks have, the pregnant person has to self-identify as Indigenous, Native American, Alaskan Native, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander. And those are the requirements of the levy, the funding for our program. But yeah, we are, we've been going since September, working hard, and reach out to us and let us know if we can help.
So what I'd love to just take a few minutes before we move to our next speaker, and I'd love to just hear from anyone who would like to share, after hearing that activity and just thinking about how you might use it in your work, or how you might use it, or how we might adapt it culturally. I do think that if there's one thing that pregnancy often does, is that it's really an invitation for so many people to be learning about their body, and often are really motivated to make some really positive changes. And so maybe that's about being more aware of what they're eating. Maybe it's more about thinking about this other person that, you know, the stress on their body is also experiencing. That in every way, it's a preparation for parenthood, and also for that birthing person's rest of their life. And so being able to, I constantly am like, how much do we need to know of terminology? You know, how much do we need to know about, you know, Western medicine terms in order to birth in power? And it's very individual, you know, there are people who really need to read those books, and they really need to understand those terms, and they want to know all the different kinds of hormones, and they want to know the difference between dilation and effacement. And others are like, oh, cervix, okay, that's, you know, that's not the vagina, okay, wait, explain that again. And, you know, but what I do know is that having information held by people that are not birthing, and having this power dynamic of not feeling like people understand what is going on in their body is something that I don't want people to feel like. And so, you know, I feel like the understanding this terminology is because that's how the rest of the world is communicating about birth. And so having just some basic level understanding that when dilation is talked about and effacement is talked about and stages of labor are talked about, that people, it's not unfamiliar territory, that it's okay, I remember that. And that it feels powerful to people. And so I feel like that's only one tiny aspect in helping families prepare for birth, is, by helping support them to get this basic information. But that often it is important, especially for people that are interacting with medical systems. And there's so often that I talk with people and, they have no idea why a pap smear was done. They don't know what it's for. Or they don't know what a provider is looking for when they're doing a breast exam. And empowering people to understand and to know and to agree. It's not just about saying, sure, touch me, that's consent. Do what you need to do. That's such a beginning. Consent is an informed consent is just a beginning. And that we really, working with people in pregnancy is really an opportunity to help people feel like they are the directors of their healthcare and their choices, for their body and for their baby, as they're working to protect and love them. There's no one who's going to love that baby more than that family. And so I just want us to be thinking about, how do we make information like this, which was done in a really beautiful way, in a fun way, and a very understandable way, and how do we make that so that it feels relevant and powerful, to the families that we're working with? So I want to just give a moment for if anyone would like to share any thoughts about that, both when you were on your pregnancy journeys or in your work as a birth keeper. And then Vanessa, if you want to also just respond, I'll mute myself again, and just give some space to talking about just bridging this, into Native community and how it might look different. And I'll give an example. There are going to be spaces where using certain terminology feels comfortable and others it's not. I've taught childbirth education for several decades, and in different communities it's different. When I work with teen moms, it's different. Maybe the terminology might be different for someone in a typical childbirth class versus a class that I teach with the tribes. The difference between a class that's 3 hours and a class that's 8 weeks. But there is this fundamental, just basic body knowledge, that we want people to have before they begin their journey of birth. Okay, do you have any closing thoughts, Vanessa? And then we can move to our next speaker.
Sure. I also want to add, as a childbirth educator, this is just one tool in my toolbox, right? And sometimes, like as Rhonda alluded earlier, is sometimes families just want to know the basic comfort measures, right? And we'll just go through positions and why these certain positions would be good at these different points of labor. Sometimes they don't want to do that, since they're not interested in that. And it's not my job as a childbirth educator to push that onto them if it's not appropriate. But yeah, this is a tool that you could use, and I find it pretty useful. But yeah, I guess if no one else has any comments or questions about it. Oh yeah, Nancy.
Hi, yes, I'm Nancy, living in California, originally from Mexico. I love the way that you presented the information and to deliver that information to parents. Another thing, I'm a midwife. I practice an eclectic mix of tradition, like indigenous midwifery from Mexico, and also contemporary midwifery that I learned here in the States. I do something similar with information, but that I incorporate more somatic exercises, where I have them dance. I have the couples dance, the moms dance when talking about oxytocin, and them like hugging and doing like this ritual, you know, rhythmic birthing dance, you know, that represents the oxytocin, the love. And one other thing that I would just suggest, or you know, or I would like adapt from your tool is to also add relaxin. I think that's a really important. And when I talk about relaxin with the couples, I ask them to do just like a pelvic dance, you know, and I just like guide them to do this, and it's like an activity to just like let go, you know.
That's
and
fantastic.
So yeah, I really like relaxin. And then also melatonin. Melatonin is a hormone that's equally important because there's equal amount of receptors in the uterus as oxytocin. So, and melatonin is really important because it reminds us that it's okay to rest. It's okay to close our eyes, you know, and just like rest, to be able to have that energy when we do really need it in the active in the pushing part of having a baby, no? And so I ask the couples to like do like a meditation with their eyes closed, to receive no light, you know, to remember that melatonin is part of the birthing process also. And that's why we have like everything with no lights, you know, with little amount of light in the birth process. And so I just wanted to share that, and thank you so much. I love the artwork and the involvement in this tool. Thank you so much, Vanessa.
Thank you, Nadsine. You know, the relaxin is a great, I mean, how often have we as birth keepers have that conversation with that pregnant person who's like, oh gosh, my achy this, and oh, what's happening with my hips? And that really does kind of explain what's going on in their body. That's fantastic. Thank you for the suggestion. I will adapt that and add that on there. That's huge. Yeah, that is what I find with that tool, is that as I read through it, with whether it's a couple or through a class, you know, we read it, what, in like 15 minutes, 20 minutes. That activity usually ends up being like the full hour, or like the 40 minutes, because we're expanding on that, and it's usually quite effective. Thank you for sharing that, Sue. Anyone else before we move on? Well, thank you, Rhonda.
Thank you so much. But yes, the helping people prepare is something that I think about every single time. And I think the main thing is that it's different and unique for each person. You know, the stories that people have come up with when I work in different spaces and in different environments, the familiarity that certain people have around birth, around the names for their bodies, on just understanding what is happening as pregnancy is progressing. But that the main thing that I really want to stress is that whether it is in any pregnant body, and then also specifically with Indigenous community, that the way that we really speak to our souls and the way that we really gather knowledge has seldom, you know, been in, you know, lecture style, academic style learning. And so if we can also just use our tools of, like was spoken to, of movement, of, you know, the fact is there's going to be a lot of people that, having seen those pictures in Vanessa's slideshow and art and coloring themselves, or hearing stories, That's going to be how they're going to be able to take in that information in a way that feels meaningful and powerful, because we don't birth with our minds ever.
Yes.
We don't ever birth with our minds. In fact, anyone who attends birth knows how much our minds can so get in the way. And so we need to balance this, answering all questions and, supporting people in whatever aspects of information gathering that they need to do for them. And then also, helping people to find this peace that there's a time, to just trust and let their body be, and to quiet all of the dominant thinking aspect of themselves. So thank you again, Vanessa. And Daybreak Star is an amazing project, and we're so blessed to have that in the community. And I want to move in next and introduce our next amazing speaker, who's also just a lovely person and dear friend. And she will likely share for even an hour or so, and be able to just share her stories of her own birth journey, and how she began as a young pregnant person, trying to find information and to birth in a powerful way. So Melissa, if you want to just begin, and I will mute myself, and I'm excited to just hear your story.
Thank you so much for having me, Rhonda. I just sit here amazed listening to Vanessa's sharing and Nancy's sharing. I feel like you were the educators I was seeking like 15, 17 years ago, struggling in Vancouver, trying to find a pathway to support us to have our children. So many thoughts come in my mind when I think about your education and what you're doing now. Just knowing what I've been through, and sort of knowing, our family dynamics and what our women are downstream from in terms of colonization and in terms of, colonized bodies. I mean, I remember when I was in college at the Institute of Indigenous Governance in BC. Did I introduce myself? Shucks. My name's Melissa Meyer. I'm the daughter of Elaine, granddaughter of Josephine. I don't know my great grandmother's white name because she didn't have one. And I feel like that's where my birth story begins, with my babies, because I'm downstream from these beautiful matriarchs. And little did I know I was bumping up against their old trauma, their old issues with their bodies, things that had happened to them. There was just, looking back now, I can understand so many of the different things that was going on. I met my partner in 1996 in Vancouver. My partner's Mike Schooner from Bella Coola, from the Newhalk Nation. So I've basically been married in about almost 25 years. And we got together and quickly discovered, after about 2 years, when the honeymoon dies off, you go, okay, now our healing journey starts. And, there was just so much unhealed pain in our own families and in our own upbringings and in our own childhood and in our own families that became the most important thing to focus on. And so we started our healing journey early, not basically out of necessity, or not out of choice, but out of necessity. I don't think we were going to make it if we didn't start healing. So we were pretty conscious and intentional when we did decide to have children. And even then it was still a good idea because it was still our plan, and yet the Creator has their own plan. And the first time we got pregnant, it was about 2000, yeah, we just moved to Prince Rupert, and we were happily going along. I was about 25 years old, and it was the first time I moved back into my home community after 10 years of being away. And like everything I left was like up for healing. All the things that, you know, when you change your address, you kind of hope that kind of stuff settles down. Well, it didn't. A lot of the things that I had left as a young lady was still alive and well in my community. The family dynamics, you know, I have aunties and uncles. I mean, we were raised in a family where people could hold a grudge for, you know, 4 to 10 years. So long-standing pain, long-standing trauma and distance in our families. So, you know, that intimacy that I think my husband and I were trying to create for our family, we didn't have a real strong, healthy reference for it in our own families. There wasn't a healthy level of touch because of the traumas that have been in our families. So like listening to your language, I love it now because I understand it, but I would imagine 20 years ago, that would have been so foreign to me. I wouldn't even known how to be present in my own body, let alone trust this innate process that was about to happen. So yeah, our first pregnancy ended in a miscarriage at 13 weeks. And it just started to open us up to look at some of those big distances in our families and start to bridge those just in our own relationship. We ended up moving back to Vancouver. We got pregnant probably 1.5 years later. And again, it was New Year's 2002, New Year's Eve. We ended up back at the women's hospital and miscarried our second time. And it was really painful. I just remember it still brings up stuff that my mom was like, I told you so, and like these goofy things. And, you know, I get that it was a way she was trying to self-protect because of her own experiences and her own heartbreak. But when that's projected on you when you're very young, it's very tough not to internalize that. So we spent our New Year's Eve in the women's hospital. And it was such a visceral experience. If they didn't put me under to have that DNC, like I was just coming unglued, and I don't even know the reaction that I would have in these institutionalized settings. You know, it was like these memories coming back of what must have happened to my grandma, what must have happened to my great gran, who went to residential school, you know, had 13 children, only 10 survived, had to mandatorily have the sterilization. You know, none of that was communicated to my mom. My mom never shared that with me. This is all later in life research. You know, we could start to have these conversations. But I feel like when we decided finally, when we found out we were pregnant, our third time, we were in Vancouver, and, you know, I kind of went along with it for a while. I had a doctor. I was about 5 months. He was a male doctor. I didn't feel like it was the right fit, but I didn't know anybody else that I'd known long enough to trust. But there was this point where I had to go in for an appointment at 5 months. And the doctor goes, well, I'll probably not be at your birth because I might not even be having my rounds at that time. So I can't guarantee I'll actually be there. That was horrifying because I thought, geez, we're building this relationship. I'm supposed to trust you. Like my body's going to go through this entire process and you're not going to be there. And that was just so foreign and awkward and awful. So we gave up and my husband just trusted me and I just said, we're not going back. We're not doing this. They also sent me to the hospital to have this test for our baby at the time. They wanted to stick a needle in and test baby's heart or something. It was like, no way. So yeah, I pretty much ran and never looked back. My doctor was really upset, was chasing me down for at least another 6 weeks, phoning, trying to get me to come back. There was no way I was going back. And I had nowhere to go. There wasn't any Indigenous groups supporting birth in Vancouver then. I found a midwife from another friend. I quickly called them up and they invited me to a birth circle where it was other parents talking about babies and having babies and preparing to have babies. But none of these people were brown. Everybody was white. Everybody was rich. Yeah, I remember like a ton of books being passed to me and I was thinking, like, this is great, but this isn't me. None of these images match my body, match my community, match what I'm feeling. They sent us home with videos because we're like, yeah, water birth, home birth, it's great. And we watched all these videos while these white babies and white ladies having these babies. And yeah, it was kind of horrible. But the alternative we had was running to the hospital, and anyone in Mike's family, anyone in my family, they didn't have any resources. They would just send us, why don't you head back to that doctor? Why don't you just find another one? Why you gotta not go to the hospital? And for them, they mostly thought we were just kind of going rogue and trying to do our own thing. But I think we were in touch with something greater. And it was this sort of informed, empowered, like making it ours, like making it safe, like creating what we didn't have. And we didn't know what that was going to look like. So we stumbled. We put together this crazy team of people that showed up at our first birth. And like, you know, I was talking to somebody today about birth. I was going, make sure your team knows their stuff, because if they don't, it's such a mess. I had this crazy naturopath there who was trying to hand me herbs. Well, the woman wasn't through any of her stuff. And she was constantly at the side of my head while I was doing my thing. And she was falling apart going through all of her stuff. So it was really distracting and like exhausting, because that takes up a lot of room in the room. And yeah, so needless to say, she never came to the second birth. But the first birth was, John was due August 1st, and it was July 30th. It was like 2 a.m. My husband and I were asleep. And then I woke up about 2 a.m. and stuff was starting to happen. And, you know, I'm listening to these midwives, these white ladies going by the books. You know, they got their little checklist and they got all the supplies and I got everything there. And one of them was an enema. And they were like, you just have to empty yourself out and you have to do this. And I remember them saying it going, oh gosh, I'm not going to need to do that. But I didn't trust myself. You know, after those miscarriages, it rocks you in such a way where it shakes your faith in your body. It shakes your faith in that relationship. And so, you know, I'm still working this stuff out. Mike and I are doing the best we can. And I listened and I did this stupid enema at like 4 in the morning. I was thinking, okay, if things are going to get started here, I'll do it. Well, I did it. And then it made me release everything so forcefully that I got a hemorrhoid. I didn't know what hemorrhoids were. Just this, you know, and I'm not cluing in. I'm sitting on the toilet and it hurts to push. Finally, I got my midwife's attention and we had to figure out a way because it was so painful to want to push. And she had a birthing little chair there for me. And if I sat on it properly, I could put enough pressure on it. But when baby started coming down further, it was too painful and we had to find a better way. But something had happened in the middle of all of this. You know, I have 2 midwives there, the naturopath, my mom. My mom had a new puppy. She was there. Oh my gosh. Mike was there. So it's going into the next day. I'm contracting. Something had happened towards the evening. Like we just hit a point and like things just stopped. And it was so terrifying. Like I remember the midwife was really scared. They kept checking the amniotic or the sac, didn't have any blood in it. So there was nothing to be worried about. So they're going, okay. And so Mike and I got into the birth tub in our living room. And, you know, nothing was happening. Like I was walking around the block. We were doing all kinds of things. Everything stopped. I don't know, it was like halfway through, like they'd never seen anything like it. They were getting a little nervous, but they never let on to me. And so I just grabbed Mike, we got into the tub and we just started to gaze in each other's eyes and feel all of our feelings. And finally the floodgates just opened and we started to weep that we never had dads who raised us. My husband was going to become a father. And it's still such an emotional thing because it's, we say that that little baby boy initiated us and he really did. Because that's not quite my mom's story, but it is her mom's story as well. So as soon as the floodgates started, everything started again. We figured out some way. I think we used like a really hard square ice pack that I eventually got out of the tub and I had to lay on our couch. And my midwife was there pushing with this square pack, pushing against this hemorrhoid so I could push. Because every time I wanted to push, it just wanted to swell up. It was awful. So needless to say, the second baby, we didn't do any darn enemas. But when John was born on our couch, it was like around 10 o'clock in the morning. My mom was there. Mike caught John. My mom caught Mike. It was this kind of ripple effect. And they asked us, do you want to cut the cord? And Mike looked around and he didn't kind of know what to do. And we didn't even have time to hesitate, but he did it. And after we did it, it felt so wrong. And we wished we didn't. And he lost a pound during that week. And so when we decided to have our baby girl, we decided to have a lotus birth where we wouldn't cut the cord. And it changed everything. It was like this, we want her to have that experience where she lets go on her own time. Jonathan was born in the cull, our firstborn. And I think, like, I remember them walking around, following me around going, here's a bowl in case your water breaks. I thought it was so annoying because in my mind, I don't know how you know, but you knew it wasn't going to break. And the second time she was following me around, and I kind of waved her away going, no, I don't need it. And then somebody else was trying to follow me around with a towel, because the second time we were pregnant, we moved to North Vancouver. We were living on the Tsleil-Waututh Reserve. It was the winter of 2006. There was this crazy storm up there that knocked our power out for days. There was this ice storm. I remember we had to go and pack up and stay at my cousin's house for a night because our power went out and our heat went out. I go, I can't stay here. And a few days later, we went home. So our baby girl was due on the, I think she was due on the 29th, but it was Christmas Eve. My husband's cousin came to visit. We were baking cookies, just planning to keep ourselves busy. It was Christmas time. And my contractions started. I put something in the closet, and everything started. And my birth team was around. The same gals, the two ladies who helped at Jonathan's birth came to Emma Rose's birth, minus the naturopath, but there was another lady doing my herbs in the kitchen. So there was always somebody doing the plants, lots of teas, especially right after birth. I remember I asked her what was in it, and she said it was lady's mantle, cramp bark. What else was it? Oh yeah, cinnamon. This is a big wallop of honey for the last little bit in case you needed it. And yeah, what was the last one? Lady's mantle, cramp bark, cinnamon. There was one more thing. Ooh, I can't remember it. But man, it was such a lifesaver, and I just wanted tons of it. She would give it to me in my biggest cup. But by the time Emma Rose came, there was so much more knowing. There was so much more trust. All of that was already established because of the first birth. You know, I wasn't going to be swayed to have an enema or do anything. You know, I remember them chasing me around trying to feed me. I didn't want to eat. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to see anybody. We had this fireplace. I would walk from the bedroom out to the living room. There was the pool in the living room, and I would just head to the fireplace. Everything was dim. You know, you're like an animal. It's so, you know, I couldn't hold a conversation. My husband and son were downstairs waiting, and everything just continued to progress. Again, my water didn't break. Emma Rose was born in our bathing pool in the living room. I swear it was like 3 pushes. She was so polite. It wasn't like a lot of work like our son. And yeah, she too was also born in McCall. And Mike and John came up like for the last push. And so they were there. Mike caught Emma Rose. Baby boy was there. He was pretty excited to see her. But as they stayed, when my placenta was born, he jumped out because it scared him. I mean, he was only like 18 months old, and it kind of scared him. And it's late at night. They were supposed to be asleep, but it was a special night. So that's how we made it through. But like when I think back, what I know now and what I was looking for back then, I was looking for a team of you guys, really. When I think of those ladies, and I've talked to them since, and you know, they recognize a certain amount of trauma in our bodies and in our mannerisms and in our language, but there's not much that they can do. And I feel like I don't know, but I would think you ladies need to be more trauma informed to be able to support people in those relationships and being body aware. And like, I really love when you're talking, Nancine, about the movement, because the trauma can't stay anywhere when it's moving. Like, I think that is such a beautiful way to work through it, and dance and sing and prayers, like all of that beautiful stuff. I didn't have any of that. And I think it's just so important. I really feel like since we had our children at home, 2 more people from Bella Coola, Mike's cousins, my cousins, also had their babies. One was very young. Keisha was like early 20s. She had her baby at home. Her older sister, Colette, later in her 20s, also had her baby at home. Then Keisha did again, then Colette did. So they felt confident enough to go, I want to do this. I want this experience. I want to create that empowered space, that sacred space, where we didn't have a lot of people coming into our space. The very thing that we loved when we were learning about birthing practices, we loved the East Indian tradition. We loved that they didn't allow folks to come for the first 40 days, just immediate family, being there to lie in. I mean, because it's a chore to even get dressed and talk to people after, because you're pooped and you're tired and you just want to be lying in. And we got the stink eye from a lot of family members when we didn't open the door for the first one. And the second one, they didn't even bother. They just sent us a food tree and sent us food, which was so great. Like, I never left the house for 6 weeks with our baby girl. And like, there was nothing to interrupt the bonding and the healing that had to happen. Plus, it was the middle of winter. Where was I going to go? What was more important out there than what we were doing in our own homes? And I think because we did that and we created that, that's what got Colette and Keisha's attention. To go, oh, I want that. I want that privacy. I want that intimacy. I want that safe space. I think of so many families that don't have that or permission to. Like, there's one community I remember going to in Kitkatla, which is a Tsimshian community near us. I was there in like 1999, and they were not teaching any of their women to breastfeed. And that freaked me out when I saw that. And I was going, what is going on here? Why are we separating ourselves from our babies? Why are we, like, I knew breastfeeding was like basic. For sure we're going to breastfeed. This is the best food. But to have that relationship severed and not even questioned was really heartbreaking back then. And, when we started seeking stuff out, we thought we were rubbing elbows with these rich people, creating something new, but it wasn't. It was like a return to something we've had, and we were just trying to find our way back. And then it turns out my dad's best friend, he grew up in Saskatchewan, and he had attended over 3,000 births with his gran, because she used to go and help babies be born out there. And, after we had our children, my dad used to like to joke and talk to him about us, because he could relate and he could understand. But they stopped birthing at home in our village, I think in like the 20s, 1920. So, there was a long period of time where people no longer had autonomy or sovereignty around their own birth. And that's what we were up against. And I think there's still that today. I mean, like, I think of my best friend's mom. she got her tubes tied and she was made sterile without her consent in the 80s. So there's a generation of folks still walking around with that pain, and you know that it's such a big, I just feel like it's this gaping wound in our community, and you know it gets passed on to our kids. Like I'm still so adamant about this, and yet when I share about this stuff, our kids don't understand this because they never not had that. They never not had the bonding or the intimacy or the safety that, you know, we have now. But I just go, we had to find this. We had to discover this. We had to recreate this. We had to forge this new path to remember it. And I'm just thrilled that it came back in our family. And I don't know what it'll bring, but I know that there's still family members that still call and, you know, they want to talk about breastfeeding, or they want to talk about herbs, or they want to talk about, you know, what's it like to have your baby in the water, or yeah. So I just feel like now I'm just, you know, a big sister in our family to share. Same with my husband. I probably left a ton of stuff out, Rhonda.
I just love hearing you share.
Oh.
I would love to, just knowing you and knowing the age of your daughter, I'm just curious if you want to just share the next step, and you know, how you're holding these kinds of conversations to support your daughter long before it's her time, and just sharing a bit about where you're at with that at this point in time.
Well, you know, there's no body aversions, there's no body shame, there's none of that stuff. We nursed both children for 5 years each. And there was a point where they overlapped, and I had to eat so much and I had to sleep so much. So, you know, there is a presence around our kids because they're so comfortable in their bodies. They've got really healthy nervous systems. They've been held a lot. Like I did all the nursing, but Dad did like swimming and bathing and, you know, all the other stuff. And I mean, there's still wrestling around here. We have a wrestling match downstairs like every night still. There's still so much hands-on. I mean, God, our son slept with us till he was 11. Emma Rose still climbs into bed with us. There's just, yeah, there's so many things that are just natural and normal in our family now, like sexuality. Like, I mean, it was, you know, my husband and I would make love, and all of a sudden, in the middle of the night, somebody would wake up and want to sleep with us and be in that space. And I think if we weren't, like if we had any of our old trauma still running, we would have been like scared. We would have not allowed that to happen. We would have been all like self-conscious, but it was like, of course they want to be in that space. That's where the love continues to grow and be shared for our family. So yeah, like it's just natural and normal in our family. We had baby girl. We had baby boys coming of age when he turned 13. That hadn't been done in our families for, I don't know, both of our families for a long time. Like nobody remembers it in Port Simpson, where I'm from. In Bella Coola, there's vague memories. You know, when the potlatch system went underground, there were so many parts of our ceremonies that got lost as well. And so when we brought it back, it was part ceremony and part just healing, because we knew the people participating we're just going to be able to heal what they didn't have. And, you know, our son, you know, gets shared with by uncles and aunties. Nobody is different. Nobody has any kind of more wisdom or hierarchy in our family. It's just everybody's equal. Everybody has bodies. Everybody loves. Everybody burps. Like, they're just really relaxed and comfortable about that. We did that for son. You know, those bonds in that circle that we made, like John knows he's got that support for the rest of his life. He sees those guys, he goes, I'm really seen, I'm really known. And so when it was time, we also did that as well for Emma Rose. We actually went back to the Tsleil-Waututh Reserve right where she was born. We did that in February before COVID. I swear if we didn't do that, I would be a mess right now because I needed all those people to fill me up right now. And it was very tender. There was lots of family members. We had a circle of about 25 different ladies, all ages, aunties, cousins, grandmas, and everyone shared. And like, you know, for a young 13-year-old to sit through an hour of this, it was a lot, but she was like really relieved that, you know, everybody's experienced their own share of growing up and what it feels like to have this changing body and what our roles change and feel like in our families, because no matter what, we're all one big family. And yeah, it was really beautiful. She received her New Hulk name. Our family taught her about her namesake. She received a blanket. She received an apron. She hasn't been able to go home and dance it yet in Bella Coola, but when that border opens, we'll make our way home. And yeah, like the other thing that really connects our family is the plants. We make medicine together. You know, all the giveaway was mostly plant medicine that we gifted to our family at that coming of age. There was a couple of things that we gave away, but most of it was plant medicine we made together. And yeah, I just think that's another thing that really keeps us bonded and grounded in that tradition of working together. Yeah. Thanks, Rhonda. Anybody else have any questions, comments? It's kind of a lot.
Would you, I'll ask a question. In your work with plant medicine now and your work with the Seattle Indian Health Board and in garden work and in the different spaces that you are, do you have any, for the people who are currently preparing for pregnancy or are pregnant, you know, what would your thoughts be on the pieces that you wish that you could gift them, whether it's the plants, the foods, the ceremonies, any of those pieces? You know, what would you like to gift the pregnant people?
Well, I never sort of offer anything unless it's asked for. I feel like that's the colonial way, is to like assume some kind of authority and offer anything. I treat them just like I do with my children. If they're asking, they're ready, their spirit knows, like I trust that. So I sort of just take the cues from what gets asked. You know, some people want more information around creating more ceremony in their life and ceremony around their birth. And, you know, I'll just listen. Most of the time they'll come up with something, or they're just actually wanting to share so that they have permission to go and then start that in their families or research that or reimagine it again, you know, if it hasn't been for a while. I think our communities still need so much support around nutrition, just because Like colonization has really impacted our bodies. It's really shifted our entire ways of being. Some of us don't have access to land anymore. Some of us can't even move around if we're cooped up in little apartments. So there's just, you know, I kind of just listen and support people where they're at. And, you know, if they want nutritional support, then I'll always recommend, you know, our really great local powerhouse foods. And I'm often just recommending like more and more nutritious indigenous foods, really going, it's probably going to be the only thing that satisfies you. Like my mom fed our children since they were 6 months old, our salmon. So like they're really strong, healthy folks. And we're kind of grumpy, grouchy, cranky, miserable when we don't have enough of it. And we can't pretend, you know, like when it's school, we have to eat salmon on Sunday nights so we could make it through the next week because we're kind of a mess. And yeah, I'm always sort of supporting people to go back to their lineages and feed their spirits the way it was meant to. And if they don't have access, then we try and research ways where we can facilitate that. And then always reminding them to heal on the land that they're on, like not to resist that you're in this place and these resources are being offered you now. Receive them. You know, this land wants to love on you too. You know, your ancestors know what you need wherever you are. That helps. Yeah, and the rest thing is huge. I think we have something in our culture that just thinks we have to be perfect, full on, go, go, go moms. My biggest thing is always reminding moms to like rest and put their feet up any chance they can. A lot of times when they come and see me, I'm just giving them like baths to like pamper themselves and give them permission to lock themselves into the bathroom for an hour with the best tea, with some really great, lovely herbal cream or something to pamper themselves. Give them permission to rest, to sleep when they need it. I just feel like there's such a pressure to like do all the things, and it's really not important, and it was not essential. I remember how, you know, life went on when I didn't leave the house for 6 weeks, but nothing fell apart. And, you know, we didn't seem like we missed out on much. In fact, we loved what we were cultivating at home ourselves. Yeah, I always remind moms, I go, there's no prize for being the best super mom, because nobody's handing those out. Nobody's policing you. You're just doing the best you can with what you have, and you have enough, and it's okay to ask for help when you need it. Yeah.
Were you wanting to share your photos?
Oh my goodness. Okay, let's see. I'm going to share a screen. Well, I got to open this. Sure, I've got some photos of Emma's birth. Show you guys the pictures of the Lotus birth. Let's see. Okay, here we go. So I have to go like this. Slideshow. Wait.
So you need to share the screen first.
Okay. Let's see. Let me go back. Okay, share screen. Here we go. Okay. Here we go. Tell me if you see my screen.
I do.
Okay. There we go. So then I go like this. So there's our Emma Rose. This was when Dad and John came up from downstairs on that Christmas Eve, and they got in the tub, and I swear it was like 3 pushes. I just remember it feeling like waves, and I just knew what to do. And she was smaller. He was like 9 pounds. She was 8 pounds. And she was real easy and sweet to come through. And yeah, you can see we didn't cut her cord. It was still connected. I mean, this little baby girl, she latched on straight away, and it was 2 hours straight. I remember being so hungry, but I couldn't move because she was doing her thing, and it was like 2 hours. You know, Dad wanted to meet her, but she was doing her thing. These photos came out of my scrapbook, so they're really old. I had to like photograph them, and you can see the little stickers I have on here. It's because the children like to share their birth story with their friends. So we had to like put some pictures on to make it like less graphic. So this is what we did for Emma Rose. We bought we bought a present for Jonathan that was gifted to him from baby girl. So, you know, there wouldn't be that sort of competition or competing. And he was thrilled, you know, this new baby bought him these really cool trucks. So, you know, these are the midwives looking after me, and he was, you know, happily playing with his toys while we were all finding our way. So that was the next day. You can see her placenta still connected. A girlfriend who's a potter of mine, she made this bowl, and when she gifted it to me, I knew exactly what it was going to be for. But there was this really special thing that we noticed that was so obvious when Emma Rose was still connected to her placenta. Here was Son, this little 18-month-old, climbing around us, you know, loud, bumping into things, like being all busy, but she would never stir. It would never interrupt her. It would never phase her. Like, she didn't notice him at all. She was still in her own world. And it wasn't until her placenta released that it was like she became way more present. She was here and she noticed him. It was like night and day, and it was so obvious. And we thought that was really special that she arrived on her own terms, and we didn't hurry her, and, you know, she was coming in her way. There's another cover up, but this was the second day, and baby girl's nursing. We're still connected to the placenta, so I think I must have been running around, like going to the washroom and stuff. And this is the middle of winter, so we must have had a lot of heat on because I don't even have any clothes on here. So I think the placenta came off faster than we thought, because everyone kept telling us it would take like a week, maybe 2, but it was winter and it only took a day and a half. And this is all we did. We sprinkled it with a tiny bit of lavender, like not even a lot. And everybody's warning us that it was going to smell terrible and it was going to start to get like really yucky. It never did. And like you can see, you know, where it's connected, but as it gets towards her, you can see where it's starting to dry off and it's just doing its thing, you know. And eventually it was later on that evening where it did come off, because I know when I was sitting there nursing her, John kept coming. He kept wanting to get on with Mom. And I must have been with her for a while because now Mike's got her. And I remember sitting with John and he wanted to nurse because she was having his turn. And he was like, I don't like this milk, Mom. I don't like it. I mean, it must have been loaded with colostrum and all the good things that she needed. But this was how peaceful she was when she had her cord still connected. She was absolutely in her own space and in her own world, we felt like, and it was so precious. And, you know, we just like honored that and didn't hurry her and really made space for that. So here was Dad taking his turn. And then that evening it did come off, and that's when she started to notice John. And it was really pretty sweet. And here was John sharing me with her. I don't know how we did it. I can't even remember. Like, I must have stopped nursing him for a little while. I don't know how he managed, but he kind of was like patient and waited, because most of the time it was Emma nursing, but he did continue to nurse till he was 5. So somehow we managed. But this was most of our lives for the first little while. This was a lot of what we were doing. And yeah, we did a lot of this. And I just think this is so precious how she's watching him. That's still how she looks at him today. She still adores her big brother and watches everything he does. And this is where my husband and I were going, well, I don't know if we're going to have any more because there's not enough boobs to go around. Yeah, that was pretty sweet. Yeah, and both of them developed the exact same way. They had no hair till 18 months. It was pretty sweet. Okay, I think this is done. Let's close that. Oh. Yeah, any questions, any comments?
Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Mariana.
Oh my God, that was so sweet and amazing. I have to say that I remember when I was pregnant at the tribal food sovereignty gathering at Suquamish. I remember you were just like, get your plants together and like, you know, just get your space, you know, like you were just like, you got this. And I probably already had shared, you know, I was having a home birth and Rhonda was my midwife, or you know, yeah. And I just remember wanting to talk to you more because, yeah, these stories are so sacred and they're so important to what Rhonda shared in the beginning. There's just not enough of them. And then just even hearing some music in my background. My 15-month-old is, yeah, playing. Yeah, it's like when you started to share just about like parenthood journey, how I just realized how hungry I am for more of those stories too. And that was just really beautiful. And I'm so grateful. I don't know if you can hear me when he's banging. Yeah, I'm just so grateful, and I look forward when I can actually like see you again in person and just like hear more. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, anytime, please feel free to reach out.
Yeah.
I think what still just amazes me was when the young people in our family, the 2 cousins who felt confident enough to go, I'm doing this for my family, I'm doing this for myself. And they initiated this. And it is such a healing thing that's going on in our families. My mom never breastfed us. I think maybe she did with my brother about 6 months, or no, she didn't. They didn't let her. And then she breastfed me for not even 3 months. And so every time she'd be around us and we were nursing again, she was just like, aren't you guys done yet? Like, can't you just stop this? And she would just get so humiliated and mortified. And it was just like, this is so natural. This is so normal. But we had to like stand in that for our families to feel that as the new normal. Because what they had was so not normal. And like how we birthed our children confronted so much of this in our family. It triggered so much. Like there was a lot of people who weren't fans, and they still are. They swear by the church. They swear by, you know, everything done a certain way. And we're not about making anybody wrong, but we're going, we have a choice, and you can create that sacred space that you want. And if you want something different, dream it, claim it. And then, like, people already knew Mike and I from a lot of the healing work that we've done. So like they trust in our relationship. So, you know, like I knew Colette would follow, but I didn't think her younger sister would, because she was a real fiery one. And when she did, it was pretty amazing. And it, like, her partner, their family's hardcore Christian. So when they decided to do this, it was like, wow, you guys are awesome. You guys are amazing to create this for yourselves. Yeah. I still feel the fire of it. I feel like we still are pioneering a path that I feel like you gals are like warriors, you know, like the space that we're claiming. I always feel like it's hard earned, you know, like you gals are, you know, trailblazing and making this possible and creating a viable, healthy, normal, beautiful, empowered way. And I just salute you, and so grateful to stand with you. And yeah, I mean, I thought for a hot minute there, for a little while, I was like, this is so awesome. I'd love to become a midwife. And then I was like, no, that's not my path. I'll just stand over here. I'll share, and then just support those who want to create this for themselves. Yeah. And now that I live down here, there's so many cool people I could send them to. Like, I love that these spaces, and they're almost like institutions now that are ours, that you can refer folks to. And like safe brown birthing spaces exist. I think it's so important and so necessary. Yeah.
I just want to add, Melissa, if I can, just thank you so much for all of your sharing and in everything, in every way. You are just such a, you give so much. And I forget, I apologize. I think it was Mariana who said, you know, just wanting to stand there and listen to you talk. I literally could just listen to you for days and days and days on end. And I just so appreciate you sharing this wisdom and everything that you have. I remember a moment we had at the Native Sharing Garden at Jodel's last summer. And, you know, I'm really in a big phase of like rediscovering and reconnecting with all these things. And I just remember you telling me how, you know, everything would, how my body would remember things. And, you know, our ancestors are with us. And it just, I really hold that so closely, and I really appreciate it. And it was something I felt with the birth of my son. Was born very differently than my daughter, much like you were kind of explaining. My daughter was born in a hospital. And it was and then she spent time in Children's Hospital, and everything was very like the opposite of what we had hoped and planned for. And I hadn't done any like healing journey or anything at all. And I had made a lot of work by the time I had my son, and he was born so peacefully at home. You know, just a couple hours, and with a Hawaiian midwife, and it was just so, it was so still and quiet. And there's pictures of us, and we're both in the stars, you know, like when I was first holding him, and it was quiet, and we all, you know, we just took that time to get to know each other. And we didn't do a lotus birth, but we didn't remember to even, we didn't even think about the placenta for like 6 hours after he was born. And so it was very every part of it was just this beautiful, gentle time of us coming back to earth together. And it was just so immensely different, and it changed our breastfeeding relationship, so different than my daughter's. It was such a struggle, and it just is such a gift and an honor to be with everyone here doing this work. And sharing this with other folks.
Oh, thank you, Elizabeth. It's so interesting that you share, because Jodelle and I feel like there is a bigger thing going on at the Native Sharing Garden. There's something that happens when our people gather on the land, unobserved, in a safe space, that healing just naturally wants to occur. And those spaces are hard to come by. And we're not sure what that's going to look like, but we're curious, and we don't know what that's going to look like. But I think it's just a natural byproduct also of us gathering on the land and being in our bodies and being in community and being safe. Like, I don't know a lot of specific, dedicated Brown or Black and Indigenous spaces where we could just be ourselves. And that's one thing that we celebrate at the Native Sharing Garden, that it's big enough that we could have that experience there. And it was so great to meet you and your family there. Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Melissa, can I just say thank you for sharing, and so humbled to be a part of this podcast and to hear you live. And when you're talking about your mom watching you nurse, I just wanted to share about that experience, kind of paralleling with ours. So my wife had our older son, and I had our younger son. And both times, because she didn't breastfeed me, and it was one of those similar things where in the Philippines, there wasn't that kind of breastfeeding support, and formula was pushed because it was the right way, because it was the Western way, and that cultural practice was taken from us. But when she would watch us nurse, like it still brings me to tears, because I could just see the envy, but like also the gratitude, that her grandbabies were being fed by our bodies. And she, in her mind, she didn't have that capacity, but it was like a healing for her. So it was a little bit different in that she, I think, found healing with that. And then that's why today, breastfeeding is a big part of my practice, and that, yeah, like you said, it's the best first food. It's the only first food, part of reclaiming our bodies.
Yeah.
And caring for our children. So I have to step out for my next Zoom thing, but just thank you for sharing and sharing yourself and your story.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. I loved your presentation. I love what you do. If you ever want me to come and share again, I would love to. I think more of our people need to hear Brown people sharing stories. You reminded me, my mom was there for John's birth, and it drove her crazy. It terrified her that I got this hemorrhoid, and it just looked so out of control. She wanted it all contained. She did not come to the second birth. She was like, you guys do that on your own. I'll call you later. She didn't show up till 6 weeks later. She was terrified. And like so many steps along the way, we just encouraged mom to come in the circle. How much of this can you handle? And she would go away, and she would come back, and she would go away, and she could only do as much as she could. But yet now, when she looks back, she claims and owns all of the entire experience. So she was able to heal just as much as she could with us. And it's so beautiful. I mean, when we were doing this, it was so intentional, and it's still that when we have our ceremonies, you know, that coming of age was that ripples out into our communities and into our families. There are family members now going back to their community going, we're doing that. I don't know how we're doing that, but we're doing that. Like, we need it. And we're going to talk about healthy sexuality. We're going to talk about healthy bodies. We're going to talk about healthy relationships. Yeah, it was pretty sweet. Thank you, Vanessa. Oh my gosh, do we ever stop healing with our moms?
It doesn't end. It's a journey.
So our time is coming to an end for this week. And I want to just thank, my hands go up to both of you. Beautiful stories, beautiful information. And I would love to just open up if there's anyone who feels open to do a closing prayer or song. And then I hope that people can join again next week. These stories are important, and even whether you joined us today or just being able to have, you know, podcast for people, families to be able to listen and hear stories that feel relevant to them is just so important. So I thank you for making this space, and I thank everybody for joining us today.
Oh.
Would you like to end the session for today, Melissa?
Sure. I think it's so fitting that we're the day after the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's Memorial Day yesterday. I think, you know, all of this beautiful work that, you know, we're all endeavoring to do to hold up our ladies, to hold up our families. When I started my healing work years ago, it was this knowing that if I helped a mom, I was helping that entire family, you know. And I just think that all moms need to be loved on. You guys are all beautiful mothers, and to love on our beautiful big mama. Mother Earth needs our love right now, and I feel like how we love ourselves is the way we will love and respect our big mama. So thank you so much for what you're doing, and thank you for creating and holding this space for more of our ladies and more of our families to find their way. Thank you so much.